Reservoir Dogs, 1992. Director, Quentin Tarantino. Starring Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Steve Buscemi, Michael Madsen. Chapter 1. The Director. Since Reservoir Dogs was Quentin Tarantino's directorial debut, I want to start by taking a deeper look at his filmmaking style. One-to-one, talking, a lot. There's one thing you'll notice in pretty much every Tarantino movie: his characters never stop talking. And most of the time, their conversations have absolutely nothing to do with the plot. If anything, they have more to do with the real world we live in than with the actual story. The opening scene of Reservoir Dogs is the perfect example. Sitting around a restaurant table, Mr. Brown goes on and on about what Madonna's "like a virgin" really means. Of course, all this talking comes with a downside: it can get boring. But Tarantino knows that. That's why he plants little clues inside these seemingly pointless conversations, lines that later help us make sense of his twisted plots. And after making us sit through all that talking, he often places an explosion of violence right after it. The audience listens, the tension builds, we focus harder and harder. And just when that concentration reaches its peak, Tarantino sets the thriller off like a goddamn firework. 1-2. Violence. You can't have a Tarantino movie without violence. His films contain ridiculous amounts of blood. There's so much of it that he's practically earned the nickname the poet of hemoglobin. And naturally, that's also one of the reasons some people can't stand his movies. But Tarantino doesn't simply show violence. He combines it with great music and stylish direction until the violence itself starts looking cool. Think about Inglourious Basterds, 2009, when Hitler and the Nazi officers are massacred inside the theater. Or Once Upon a Time, in Hollywood, 2019, when Brad Pitt's character absolutely destroys the Madsen family members responsible, in real history, for the Tate LaBianca murders. Burning someone alive, blowing people up, or beating someone into a bloody pulp is obviously violence. But what happens when the person on the receiving end is someone the audience desperately wants to see punished? That's Tarantino's trick. He takes violence and unleashes it with maximum brutality on exactly the people the audience wants to see destroyed. And that's why it feels so damn satisfying. 1-3. Twisted plots. Narrative. Fuck that. The third defining feature of a Tarantino film is his ridiculously tangled narrative structure. Rather than putting all his energy into conventional storytelling, his films often focus more heavily on music, direction, action, and dialogue. Just look at Pulp Fiction. It's not enough for Tarantino to mess with chronology. He takes the stories of Jules, Vincent, and Butch and throws them together in a completely scrambled order. Reservoir Dogs does something similar. A conventional heist movie would show us the crew getting together, planning the robbery, pulling off the job, and then escaping. Boring. Instead, Reservoir Dogs begins with Mr. Orange already wounded. The surviving criminals gather at the warehouse. We jump into Mr. White's past, back to the present, then Mr. Blonde, back to the present again, then Mr. Orange's past, and finally, the ending. Writing it out like this makes the structure sound like a complete mess. Yet Tarantino makes it surprisingly easy to follow through his distinctive dialogue and direction. Maybe that's why his films often feel less focused on conventional narrative and more focused on direction, music, action, and dialogue. And that's also why I rate Django Unchained so highly. The story's fucking great, and somehow the action and music are even better. 1-4. The Movie Geek. For a moment, let's stop talking about Quentin Tarantino the director and talk about Quentin Tarantino the human being. Before becoming a screenwriter, Tarantino famously worked at a video rental store, watching practically everything he could get his hands on. He became obsessed with Asian cinema and genre films, and you can see that obsession everywhere in his work. His movies are overflowing with homages to other films. Take Reservoir Dogs. The concept of criminals gathering in one place after a robbery, the dual-wielding gunfight with the police, and the Mexican standoff-style confrontation where everyone points guns at each other all recall Ringo Lam's 1987 film, City on Fire. And that's only the beginning. The iconic yellow jumpsuit worn by Bruce Lee in Game of Death, 1978, was later worn by the bride in Kill Bill. Sometimes Tarantino even pays homage through titles themselves. Django, 1966, Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968, Once Upon a Time in America, 1984, and Foxy Brown, 1974. His entire filmography feels like it was made by someone hopelessly in love with movies. 1-5. Plagiarism. Because Tarantino borrows from so many films and sometimes recreates shots or ideas that look extremely similar to earlier movies, there has always been one question surrounding him. Is Quentin Tarantino just plagiarizing other filmmakers? Tarantino himself basically says that he steals from movies. Calling it an homage almost feels too polite. But calling it plagiarism doesn't quite work either, because you can clearly see the admiration and respect he has for the films he's borrowing from. So stealing might actually be the perfect word for it. Tarantino has famously expressed the philosophy like this: great artists steal. They don't do homages. And honestly, that's about as Tarantino as a sentence can get. Chapter 2, the movie. Finally, let's actually talk about Reservoir Dogs. There's a simple reason I spent so much time talking about Quentin Tarantino instead of the movie itself. There honestly isn't that much about Reservoir Dogs that I can explain through plot analysis. Like many Tarantino films, the story itself isn't necessarily the main attraction. It's the action, the direction, the music, the dialogue, and most importantly, the suspense. The problem is that I'm reviewing movies through words rather than images, and the suspense in Reservoir Dogs is incredibly difficult to explain in writing. It's the kind of tension you have to actually experience, so all I can really say is just watch the damn movie. At this point, I'm not even sure whether I've been reviewing Reservoir Dogs or writing Quentin Tarantino 101. Last chapter. Plus deliciously sharp dialogue, plus fucking incredible suspense. I can't explain it, just watch the movie. Plus unpredictable violence, plus a uniquely structured plot, plus great music, plus great direction, plus maybe a little too much talking. Final score, 4 stars out of 5, 9 out of 10.